Sorry about the misleading intro, but I like that sequence so much from episode 6 that I thought I'd make it our lead-in for just a little while. For this episode though, we're going to be back in the garage and we're going to talk about how I wired up the engine, the gauges, the breaker panel and ground bar, battery and accessories, as well as some other electrical gremlins that I found and fixed. But before we do, if you like what you see so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Also, feel free to share the video out to anyone you think might be interested. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. We've grown by leaps and bounds in the last 2 months, but we are currently only at 45 subscribers. Let's see if we can't get to 50 in this video's first day. Alright, let's get into it. As mentioned in previous videos, I got the engine a few months before the boat. This of course gave me some time to indulge in another part of the hobby that I love, gear shopping. Let's start with the control box. I purchased mine with the engine and was able to sort of work out from it what I wanted to buy as far as gauges. I purchased a 4-inch Tohatsu tachometer from onlineoutboards.com, and as far as I can remember, it was pre-wired with the harness that connects to the engine. For me, that meant threading it through my PVC tunnel. The only other connections are positive and negative wires for the gauge lights. For me, the positive is wired to the breaker panel and the negative to my negative bus bar. This brings us to the breaker panel. During my research, I leaned heavily towards a traditional fuse panel with a separate switch panel, but opted for a 6-switch breaker panel instead. My thoughts were that with the limited room inside the console, having a single panel was best. I'm not sure if this is the proper way to wire a boat, but my thinking was that if Blue Sea Systems was offering both, then this must be a viable option. Leave a comment below if this is all wrong, and I'm going to one day melt my boat down to the waterline. So with all my positive wires going into the breaker panel and the breaker panel hardwired into the positive battery terminal, I would need a place for all the negative lines. For this, I bought a 6-terminal bus bar and it's wired directly into the negative battery terminal. And with that, every electrical item within the console, the engine control box, the radio charger, the fish finder GPS, and all the USB ports were wired up. I mentioned before that the breaker panel is positive wired directly to the battery. Well, that's not exactly true. It's actually wired to the battery cutout switch that is mounted on the starboard side of the console, and it of course is wired to the battery's positive terminal. The battery is nothing special. It's an auto parts store marine deep cycle. Group size 24 at 550 cold cranking amps. To secure it within the console, it's held in place within a Camco battery box. The box itself is screwed into the actual console. I want to point out that I went to great lengths to not screw anything into or cut any part of the actual hull itself, but rather I wanted to secure everything to the benches and the consoles, and I had no qualms about cutting or drilling into them. The only exception was the bimini. I had no other choice there but to drill into the actual hull. That is the only place I've drilled into the actual hull of the boat itself. The last item in the battery system is the monitor. I've used and had great success with the DROK battery monitors, or DROK battery monitors, and I used one here as well. It is directly on and wired into the battery, and it gives the percentage and the voltage on a lit display with just a single button push. It has a lot of other features, but I won't get into those here. Alright, let's talk about tight places and how lubrication helps. Okay, I'm actually talking about pulling cables through my improvised PVC tunnel. Specifically, let's talk about the engine control harness. This came pre-wired from the factory, and though I dreaded doing so, I opened it and cut each of the wires inside. I did this so that I could pass it through the tunnel. At this point, I had already passed through the tunnel, the throttle, and the steering cable, so it was a tight squeeze. That's where the grease comes in, and lots of it. I also used marine grease to help get the bow rail on, but that's a story for another time. Once through, I reconnected the wires using soldering heat shrinks. If you haven't tried these yet, you're really missing out. Highly recommended. So with everything all wired up, I was ready for my first power on and fire up. Everything powered on just fine. All the lights and everything came on, but I tried and I could not on that first night get it to fire. It just would not fire, and I couldn't figure out why. I stayed up, I think, in the garage until about 3 a.m., just racking my brain and driving myself crazy. Eventually I gave up and went to bed, and the next day, as it often happens, I went back to it with a fresh perspective, and after some additional troubleshooting, I found the Gremlin. This little micro switch is part of the throttle positioning or the neutral safety switch, and mine was busted. I had probably looked at it at least 100 times the night before, but having never seen a micro switch, I never realized that the hole in the side of it was not a feature, but it was a flaw. So I ordered another micro switch on eBay, but in the meantime, I discovered that the system itself has two neutral safety switches, one in the control box like the one that's broken on mine, and there's another neutral safety switch on the engine itself. So I bypassed the one on the controls and just went with the one in the engine. And with that, she turned over and started right up. Of course, I got the replacement micro switch a week or so later, and I'm ashamed to say that I still haven't put it in. I've been way too lazy and intimidated to open the control box back up to reinstall that redundancy, but one day I'll get to it. Well, that's all today, I think. Next time, maybe we can go over some of the other electrical items in the boat, like the fish finder GPS unit, the USB charging plugs, the marine radio, and how I ended up using a bicycle GPS for a speedometer backup. Before you go though, as I said before, please don't forget to hit that like button. Feel free to share this video out, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.